Folks, I think we can start. Yeah. So first of all, thank you for coming to our sessions today on impact investment models and partnerships for the Amazon conservation and beyond. Um, First of all, we are super happy to have this session here at the CGIAR Pavilion, a place that represents global collaboration on food, on sustainable development in general. My name is Bernardo Caldas. I'm a research team leader at CIAT, Alliance of Biodiversity and CIAT. And I have been working with sustainability for 15 years now. So I'm very happy to moderate this session. And today we prepared an agenda where we are going to show some case, some perspectives from our partners and the projects that we are supporting in the Amazon, and to provide some background. Basically, where is the presentation? Folks, the presentation. Yeah. Okay, so let's start again. So basically, we prepared this session to showcase what we are doing in the Brazilian Amazon with impact investing. We have leaders, research institutions that will show some challenge and opportunities in terms of impact investing for biodiversity conservation. And folks, can you pass the slide? It's not working. Okay. And I will share this moderation with, along with Eduardo Rocha. This event occurs, or pretty much of what we are going to share with you, is based on our CALPSI program, which stands for Catalyzing and Learning through the Private Sector Engagement. It's a very unique partnership that we have with USAID Brazil. And basically what we are trying to do is to change the way that we tackle or bringing new solutions to tackle the biodiversity conservation in the Amazon. In that sense, we have two pillars. So just to share with you this context and background. The first one is regarding the private sector engagement, where we have the PPA and also the Amazon Biodiversity Fund. PPA is a partnerships platform for Amazon. So we try to foster new business models. We bring companies and other stakeholders to support and invest in new business models in Amazon. And we also have the Amazon Biodiversity Fund, which is a very unique fund focused on investing in projects that can generate positive impacts for biodiversity conservation, along with social and economic benefits. And of course, I think that is very important is how we provide transparency for those investments. In that sense, we have the monitoring, evaluation, and learning component, where we are basically developing frameworks to disclosure biodiversity impacts and also socioeconomic impacts. So, as I said, today I will share this moderation along with Eduardo Rocha from PPA. And Eduardo will guide us through the agenda and also the objectives of this session. So it's with you, Edu.
Thank you, Bernardo. I also want to thank our CGR colleagues to have this session here. It's a pleasure for us. I've been working in sustainability field for more than 10 years now. Also had some experience on marketing and innovation for the private sector. And for today, we are now in this introduction. We will have some presentations. So myself, Mark Carato, that is connected online with us, and also Wendy here with us in presence. After that, we are having a multi-sectoral panel with four very distinct and important institutions for us in PPA and also see it. So Victor, Nick, and Octavio are connected online. And Bruna is here from Michelin. And in the end, we have a space for dialogue and some questions that we can just interact. We really want to show you how the strategic partnerships between different sectors, public sector, international cooperation, NGOs, third sector, and the private sector, of course, can foster biodiversity conservation in the Amazon, but not only. We will see a case as well for the Atlantic forest. And also we think that with all the presentations and practices that we've been hearing, the cases, we can showcase some of the Amazon and tropical forest chains, right? And how can we support local development through the those chains and their potentiality for the territories. And in the end, myself and Bernardo will do just a closing remarks as well. So, Bernardo, I will give it back to you now.
Okay, thank you, Edu. So let's start with our speakers. Our first speaker is Mark Carrato from USAID, Brazil. Mark Carrato is the USAID senior representative to Brazil, leading the mission in building on its 60-year partnership with the Brazilian government, private sector, and civil society. He focuses on developing sustainable and innovative socioeconomic solutions for biodiversity conservation in the Brazilian Amazon, while also enhancing Brazil's role in global health. So, Mark, the floor is yours. Can you hear us? Is everything working well?
I can, thank you. How's everyone doing today? Sorry I couldn't be there in person. It would be nice to be there, but schedules didn't permit. Strange, I am now looking at a picture of myself, looking at myself. This is a great topic because it's one that I think is at the key of what we're trying to accomplish here in Brazil, but elsewhere as well. Just to delve into my bio a little bit deeper, I've been with AID for 20 years, and I've done private sector engagement kind of before it was the central part of what AID tries to do. Everything AID does now, on some level, especially in areas that have economic growth potential, is looking at the ingenuity, the resources, the experience of the private sector as the principal driver of trying to find market solutions for sustainable growth in whatever area we're looking at, and not so much ODA or donors like ourselves or others. And to some extent, my previous job before coming to Brazil was coordinating a program called Power Africa, which is the U.S. government's largest public-private partnership with the goal of bringing clean energy to 350 million people in sub-Saharan Africa. A big task, kind of like the task of trying to stabilize the Amazon in a way that's both sustainable for ecosystems, but also for the people that live there, and in a way that will have to find new market solutions for nature-based solutions, right? So to some extent, the core to that experience was partnership, and that's exactly what I saw when I arrived in Brazil a year ago. So I'll briefly kind of tell you two ideas we did. Bernardo's already mentioned them in partnership with others, but what I really want to do is get to is spend a few minutes talking about how one has to go about making these partnerships and some best practice and some tenets that have to be part of how we think about doing this, because it's pretty easy to say, let's sell something out of the forest, let's figure out a way to monetize a forest project or even carbon or something like that. It's a little bit harder to figure out how to make sure everyone who is in it is incentivized to do that, right? And often it's easy to miss one group or the other. In this case, today we're mostly focusing on the private sector angle, right? So I would divide it into two basic areas. One is working with corporates that have resources to invest in areas they're working or want to support, right? So we're talking about ESG and CSR and foundations, and PPA, the partnership platform for the Amazon, which Bernardo mentioned, which we helped found with CIAT and the Alliance for Biodiversity, the Alliance for Biodiversity and CIAT now, and others, was a platform we put together to try and crowdsource like-minded corporates who, one, would see each other across the table and have some comfort knowing that other businesses are investing in this, see value, and know there's transparency involved. And two, put enough structure around it so we can do what we do well in the development world, which is structure these programs, work with the communities, make sure the communities are part of the vision of what's going forward, if not the vision for what's going forward, but then make sure it has a market-based potential, a market-based solution, a way to try to bring these worlds together with a voice of communities like indigenous communities and other traditionally marginalized communities, Hibanieros and Seringueiras, can find a way that they can enter into a market economy on their terms, but ones that also allow them to be successful. One thing is saying we want to do it this way, and another thing is saying we want to do it this way and be able to go for the long haul. Which brings me to the second kind of way of doing things. Not only is it working with foundations and so forth and figuring out how they can put together a project, an education project potentially, or a social impact project, or better yet, an economic remunerative project, but it's actual P&L line investment. So companies like Natura, like Michelin, who's a great example, where they can actually figure out ways to do the community establishment of the projects and the community development, but then have it be something that is viable, something that over time will sustain, can find market prices, can be a true investment that a company will spend its own P&L money on, its profit and loss money, and not necessarily just a foundation resource or an ESG, CSR type play. They're both needed. They're both viable. To be brutally honest, they're both underdone in the Amazon. Kind of shocking to me. A little bit of ways that there are some great lessons learned out there that a place like Brazil, which is so sophisticated in so many ways, has so many partners, can also still iterate and learn from and improve on other models. Blended capital and how it's used is another part of financing those initiatives that is absolutely critical. Commercial capital, finding ways to get debt into smallholder farmers or small entrepreneurs in a way that is doable, that doesn't just rely on collateral, is absolutely critical as well. So that's one way. And what I've kind of talked about now, coming from a different perspective, is a spectrum of people who we want to support in the Amazon to stabilize and to monetize appropriately and sustainably on their terms what they can offer from a forest-based economy or offer with a forest-based economy. And that might be a slightly simpler side or a slightly less developed side of a value chain potentially, right? It could be a cooperative that's just getting into business. It could be a brand new entrepreneur. But as you move up that value chain, and you need to, if you want to have an economic-wide impact on a regional level like the Amazon, you need another kind of tool. And the second tool I'll talk about briefly that we worked on was the Amazon Biodiversity Fund, which takes a decidedly more sophisticated customer who has market, has corporate structures in place, has leadership, has a vision, has basic things like accounting systems and so forth, has a market plan, probably could enter into more sophisticated market economies, whether they be in Brazil, regional, or even global in some cases, and provide a way to allow them to get the right kind of capital to allow them to grow with appropriate technical assistance on how they need it, right? So about a while back with Athalia, which was the potential fund manager we identified back in the day, Amazon Biodiversity Fund was birthed now with a 50% guarantee from the DFC, the Development Finance Corporation, which is the U.S. government's lending arm, and a $15 million grant from aid to CGIAR to position them as a cornerstone, position CGIAR as a cornerstone investor in the ABF. So now Impact Earth runs it, and this is flexible, long-term patient capital, but more sophisticated, that does have returns and also has a more sophisticated set of KPIs. One thing, a particular note, which I see Wendy speaking later, will tell you about, is called Terra Bio. This is looking with geospatial information and eDNA as a way to quantifiably show that we could affect the biodiversity as compared to a control group, right? So much like a lot of the other things in AID's world, particularly like health, where you have very quantifiable things, you can count bed nets toward malaria, you can count test scores in education. We're hoping to define better metrics that will quantify on some level, in this case, the biodiversity improvements we're hoping to have through these collective investments. And with that, you can bring certainty and you can bring tools that will bring predictability, which is what capital needs to enter the market, right? So the more you can show that there's TA, there's predictability, there's commercial capital, it's blended maybe with philanthropic capital and other kinds of patient capital and grant capital, those people are being helped, and you have ways to measure their success, you bring predictability to the system. And in the two examples I've given, one can be with a slightly less mature client, and one could be with a more mature, and there's everything in between, right? And both of those can happen through an ESG or CSR or foundation, a program, a development program type approach. Fantastic. And they can happen and need to happen more with an actual product or P&L investment type approach, where people see the value of investing in communities, investing in the future of their supply source, right? Just like anything else, they want to pay to make sure they have the right kind of inputs for their business. In the case of Natura, let's say in cosmetics, the right kind of sourcing, and they know they're doing the right thing, right? So that brings me to my last point I want to make really quickly. And this one's a little more theoretical and taking us a bit beyond those two examples. And that is that there's a room for a third, or there has to be a third, in fact, way we look at this, both conceptually and actually. And this is the idea that we want to make sure that we monetize the cost of the biome, right? In some respects, it's like an input, like anything else, right? If you make a widget and it takes metal to make your widget, you pay for the raw material of the metal to make your widget, right? But we don't do that with the earth. And we certainly don't do that with a lot of things that come out of the value of having a healthy Amazon biome, including everything from breathing air to biodiversity to fresh water, right? It's kind of a free good. And sometimes that free good is stolen when the forest is cut down. Sometimes that free good is taken and stolen and sold, like illegal timber. Or sometimes with some projects that can be taken and used for a secondary way to pay for that resource, like a carbon market. But what we increasingly have to do is figure out that when companies work in this biome, or even take advantage of it indirectly, that they monetize on both sides of the spreadsheet. They cost out what it costs to work there, and then they figure out ways to pay for it within the P&L line item, right? So the example I gave of Natura is a great one. It's an easier one to understand. Something's coming out of the forest, so no doubt someone has to have labor to get it out, has to prepare it, has to have value added. There's a cost to that, and that cost gets borne out into the final product. But others, like carbon, or paying for environmental services, or increasingly knowing that the common good of the Amazon, both to Brazil and the world, has a cost, it has a value, ergo it has a cost. We need to think of more ways to push that nature-based solutions into our thinking here with the private sector, right? So whether it's the ESG, CSR folks who want to say, oh yeah, I see value in keeping the Amazon around, here's some money, or we make market structures like carbon markets, like we're trying to do better with, right? Potentially a biodiversity market. Here's some more capital put in there to protect this good, which I know is an input into my business, whether I directly account for it or not. These things are critical. And they give voice to those communities to continue to be stewards that we know they are. The indigenous are the best stewards, scientifically proven, of the forest standing that have ever lived and ever will live on Earth. So why don't they have an ability to economize on their terms what they're already doing, which is living sustainably with their ecosystem that we all benefit from, even if we're not living exactly where they're living. So that's another critical way for this panel to start grappling with. We all need to grapple with. The reality is that when you look at preserving the Amazon, you look at those communities, you look at urban Manaus, you look at rural Pará, wherever you're looking, that most of these systems are going to be multi-revenue approaches. It's not going to be easy enough just to say you're going to sell castagna and you're going to sustain your community. It's not going to be easy enough to say there's one thing you can pull out of the forest and maybe add value to chocolate, let's say cacao, and sustain a multitude of communities vis-a-vis that production. You're probably going to have to find multiple revenue streams that have to be worked out, paying for some sort of environmental service, multiple economic streams, and so forth, to sustain the 30 million people who live there, to continue to have a private sector-like solution, and to allow them, again, to enter the market on their terms. And not just say you have to do it this way, because we all know that's a critical part of making sure the vision for the people who have protected the forest so long can continue to protect it. I'm going to stop there. The slides were up there a little bit to kind of show the stages. I think hopefully everyone knows this at this point. You start small, you build capacity, you do some testing, you catalyze those ideas, you figure out how they work. There's a lot of incubation markets out there for entrepreneurs, for larger land-based programs, for looking at new things like reforestation on scale, for looking at reforestation with sustainable timber extraction, or looking at with agroforestry. And then you start figuring out ways to crowd capital there. And at first it has to be patient capital and people who are willing to take a loss. But then you show by doing that you can make commercial returns as you climb, as I said, that sophistication of that spectrum of clients who you want to work with, from the least sophisticated, all the way up through the companies that ABF and then beyond can invest in, to make the whole thing grow. And I think you have to work across that whole spectrum if you want to see a regional economic change. And I think that's what we're shooting for at AID. We want a regional economic change. We're not going to be satisfied with just doing a few good things here and there. We want to work both with policy and capital to figure out a way to blend those facilities, those different kinds of capital I mentioned, the patient capital, the commercial capital, the debt, the investment, the private equity, with the right kind of technical assistance at all those levels, so the whole thing grows at once. And then the ecosystem itself will start sustaining, right? That's that investable ecosystem. And this is what we saw in renewable energy 15 years ago. You had to invest some of the markets, you had to invest some of the market regulations, you had to invest some of the players, you had to invest in the support services, right? And then after you started investing in those, plus the companies they served, it starts growing on itself, because the business models people can see all throughout the Amazon. People like Nick, who saw it a long time ago, early adopters are the ones that will continue to push us going forward, as you hear a little bit later from ABF. I'll stop there. Thank you very much for setting this up. This is a critical topic. It's the one that's not only going to save biodiversity, the topic of this COP, but the one that is truly going to anchor this new way of thinking, this new way aid wants to be within this environment, of development in the Amazon. Gone is the days where we have a project and we write a little bit of a grant and someone comes and gets our money and they do a project and they report back the results, and we hope at the end it all adds up enough to make a big impact. We have to blow open the model. We have to do things like this. Private sector has to be at the core, but they have to learn as well. And they need us as much as we need them. So together, this is the way to go forward. That third leg of the stool, of course, the community, the people themselves, is absolutely critical. So keep in mind the people you're working with. Keep in mind the people whose resources, ingenuity, and experience we need to make this happen. Keep in mind the folks who have been more project-oriented, like the AIDs of the world, since day one. And together, you can figure out a whole new way to blow open this ecosystem. Thanks, and have a fantastic discussion.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark, for sharing your thoughts. I think those are very good points and needs some reflection. Move on with our agenda. We'll pass to Eduardo Rocha to present the PPA experience, challenge, and etc. So, Eduardo, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So at PPA, I work as engagement manager, and basically I take care of our partners and our politics on terms of association and building confidence relationships. So thank you very much for the partners that I can see from here. It's a pleasure, really. Can we please move on? So what about PPA? PPA is the partnership platform for the Amazon. We are a multi-sector collective organization, and I will talk more about that. We passed from an initiative to an organization last year, like officially formalized, and we work to develop and identify solutions that can really foster biodiversity conservation and the private sector engagement to do that together in collaboration, right? How we do that? We look for mechanisms that can leverage investments for the territories, for projects and programs in the Brazilian Amazon with positive impact, sharing good practices with the ecosystem, and trying to be very innovative in terms of how we build each partnership for each program. And I will talk more about our two types of projects as well. Before that, the strategies. So you can see here that in the middle we have this big tree, which stands for our programs and projects that we follow with implementing partners in two different areas, like territorial development and the strengthening of impact businesses. Also, to support that, we work for collective action dialogues, and as maximum as we can, we try to put awareness on the local actors and how they see the initiatives from their point of view. Also, we work with a strong strategy of knowledge. So not only analyzing local contexts in the Amazon, but also measuring the evolution of each initiative, impact with the support and help from CIAT and through the CALPC program, and sharing some learnings and innovations with the ecosystem again. Finally, as a transversal strategy that is communication. So we work very hard to bring visibility for successful stories and learned lessons. So this is the way that we believe we can really consolidate our value proposition as a platform. Okay. So yeah, in terms of the two types of programs and projects, I've talked already about territorial development, and what I want to show you afterwards is the practices and examples that we have in this portfolio. So for territorial development, we are talking about the arrangements between public sector and enterprises and implementing partners in specific areas in the Amazon. So sometimes is in the surrounding of an operation, of a business operation, sometimes is in a strategic area for sourcing, right? We plan all the initiatives to check and generate the nature-based solutions that will benefit both human being and biodiversity conservation. This is one part and a big part of the portfolio we manage. The other part is strengthening impact businesses. So I'm pretty sure you all know about what is an impact business, but for us, we define them as enterprises, usually community business as well, that tackle some social and environmental problems through the market logic. So we are talking about positive impact with financial return. And we always we always show how we do that on each type of the portfolio. So for territorial development, you can see that we combine resources and efforts from both private sector and from implementing partners, which can be local from the Amazon or international organizations. We will be talking more about the rubber extraction revitalization in the Amazon, which is a partnership with WWF, Michelin, and Michelin Foundation, and some technical cooperation from local actors in Brazil, such as CNS and Memorial Chico Mendes. Also, we talked before about Natura, which is a very important partner for us, and this is they run with the support of Citaui as implementer partner, a territorial program in the middle Juruá, especially in Carauari, in the middle of Amazonas province. In Maués, which is a very important city in Amazon provinces as well, and very well known for the Guaraná value chain. We have a project there with Ambev and the implementing partner Instituto Terroir. Also, we work with two big companies for minery, one in Barcarena in the state of Pará, with a partnership that we have with Hydro, and in Juruti, another city in Pará as well, that we had the support also from Instituto Alcoa, City Foundation, but the main partner there is Alcoa with the implementing partner called IJUS, Instituto Juruti Sustainable Juruti Institute. So this is one part of the portfolio, and the other part, we support nowadays different types of programs that strengthen impact businesses. So we are not directly working with the businesses, but we have partners that have specific methodologies for specific territories or positionings of those businesses. So Impact Lab with Impact Hub Manaus. Also Natura is implementing a very interesting initiative called Carbon Insetting in Amazon communities, especially in the border between Acre and Rondônia provinces. Also one big project with Conexus called Social Bioeconomy in the Amazon, working mainly with community businesses. Nest Amazon for as a forest incubator, and Citaui working with broadening the access for lending and investments from people like us or enterprises as well in a crowd lending platform. Finally, how we became an organization after being an initiative. So this was a very long way that it started actually with accelerating businesses, and then through the time we understood that we needed to have some impact thesis under an umbrella of the PPA's theory of change. So nowadays, those are our guides, and in last year, in 2022, we ran a mapping, very interesting, that was just translated in English now, so if you want, you can just have this translated version now, where we saw 66 different initiatives that strengthen local businesses in the Amazon, in Brazilian Amazon, from 62 different organizations. Our role is to give visibility for all those initiatives, so we can actually work more in a collaborative way, not competing, but trying to be complementary. So as a platform, we have this responsibility of really identifying good practices and trying to put the ecosystem together, and this is like probably a long path, but we have to continue doing that. We heard a lot of the power of collaboration and the power of the networks, so I think we will achieve a better context for the Amazon businesses. So yeah, I think I'm done now, so thank you.
Thank you, Eduardo. I think PPA is a very good example how to gather different partners and stakeholders to catalyze new models of business in the Amazon. For our final presentation, I will invite Wendy Francesconi. Wendy is a senior environmental scientist at the Alliance Biodiversity and CGIAR. And Wendy will present a very innovative approach and something very important in this impact investing ecosystem, which is providing transparency to the investments and more security, I would say. So Wendy, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Bernardo. So yes, I'm going to be talking to you guys about TerraBio, which is this approach for impact measurement, reporting, and verification. So I'm going to start actually by making you guys a little bit depressed. So we have a picture here of forest fires in the state of Rondônia in the Amazon, in the Brazilian Amazon. And this is an occurrence that happens annually. There's lots of forest fires happening for land grabbing type of activities, which are then later converted into forest pastures for cattle ranching. And there's also fire applied to these pastures for management purposes, for cleaning them. So this is getting worse. Air quality is getting terrible. When you travel to these places, your throat hurts, your eyes hurt. So the reason for this is that people, are applying these fires to grab land, and they know that pastures are an economic model. the one that they know, the one that they're used to. So the idea is to try to promote activities, economic activities and models that can displace these type of business models in this region. And in that sense, we want to find alternatives, economic alternatives for producers in the region that take advantage of the richness that the forests have. So bringing value to the forest through bioeconomy type of activities, and that also promote local communities through socio-biodiversity type of value chains. So with that, what do we do? There's different pathways to try to make that shift, that paradigm shift that is required in the farming communities that live in these regions. So Mark mentioned the Amazon Biodiversity Fund is a mechanism for impact investment that is bringing capital to different business models that engage farmers in the region to basically promote different type of alternative economic activities. So we have different pillars in the fund, pillars that are supporting economic activities, business models that are looking at reforestation activities, engaging local communities, business models that are supporting sustainable farming practices, business models that are supporting smallholder value chains, and also other type of business models that basically are promoting innovation, technology, and finance services for these actors that are looking for resources, looking for ways and enabling conditions to promote alternative business model opportunities. Nick is going to be talking later on about the fund itself a little bit more, but the fund was co-created between USAID Brazil, the Alliance Biodiversity and CIAT, and the fund manager Impact Earth. So he's going to talk a little bit more about that. But as we develop and apply the fund into different business operations in the Amazon region, so the question is how to monitor, how to generate the evidence so that this impact investment generates that impact that we're seeking, right? So this is our take, TerraBio is our take on MRB, right? Because there's not really a clear pathway on how to do MRB for biodiversity at the moment. We have, for carbon projects, a clear way to do it, how to certify, how to monitor, how to verify, but not so much for biodiversity at the moment. So TerraBio is a way in which we are including what we know in terms of carbon projects for monitoring areas using satellite imagery. But by monitoring area as a proxy for biodiversity conservation is not enough. We have to look also at the ground and do inventories of biodiversity, the presence of species in these interventions, so that we have actual robust data that tells us, what's happening with these communities and how these business models and interventions are actually contributing or not to the conservation of biodiversity. So by looking at satellite images, at area proxies, it's not enough. We also have to look at basically monitor species in these intervention areas. So thinking outside, not the box, but the plot. So TerraBio has two components. It has a geospatial component and it has a biodiversity monitoring component. For the geospatial component, basically we'd look at satellite imagery and remote sensing to look at the intervention areas, ensure that the businesses that are receiving funding from the fund are actually implementing on the ground what they say they're going to do. So satellite imagery helps us in these large extent areas to monitor the hectares that they're actually planting, restoring, etc. In addition to that, then we do biodiversity monitoring. We are using environmental DNA, which is a biodiversity monitoring approach. We collect soil samples at the intervention areas. We also compare that to forest reference areas and to counterfactuals, which in most of the cases is, again, pasture for cattle ranching areas. And then combined, we have a whole picture of what's going on in terms of the implementation of these business activities and the impact that they have on ecosystems and biodiversity. So TerraBio being applied to the portfolio of projects within the Amazon Biodiversity Fund provides standardizing metrics. So by being able to apply the same tool and the same metrics. We generate the same type of information or indicators so that we can compare not only within the business over time, but also between businesses, so that at the portfolio level, we have standardized metrics to tell us how the portfolio is actually having an impact on biodiversity. As you can see here, we have some of the business deals that the fund is currently supporting, and each one is very different. One is on shaded coffee in X region, the other one is on silvopastoral systems with palms for palm oil production, another one is on reforestation type of activities, so they're all very different. So the idea of providing a tool that can be applied to different geographies with different actors for different products is very, very strong. So here to give you a little bit of an example of how the fund is applied. So within the KPIs of the fund itself, the projects are required to report on about 7 different thematic areas. TerraBio is supporting the deals and the fund by monitoring the environmental KPIs. So we're talking about species protection, environmental health, and climate mitigation through the interventions of these projects that are financed by the Impact Investment Fund. TerraBio generates a series of different indicators that respond to those KPIs or to the thematic areas for the KPIs. And in that sense, we support with species monitoring, which is a know-how that businesses really don't know how to do. So we can standardize that across the different projects. And when it's a carbon project, for example, we generate information that can help us verify that what they're reporting is correct. So this is, again, our take on measuring, monitoring, and also verification. And all of that is wrapped in a report that is customized for each business deal and produced annually in collaboration with them, but also it's produced at the portfolio level. So basically, we aggregate the results from the different projects into a portfolio level type of reporting so that, again, we can look at not only the projects on an annual basis and over time, there's an 11-year fund, but also we can look at the whole portfolio and where it's performing better or worse based on its deals. And not to leave you on a sad picture note, so this is one of the projects, the restoration project that is focused on restoring riparian areas. It's a carbon project, and this is the 2nd year of intervention. So as you can see, over here, we have some of the plantings, the seedlings that were planted 2 years ago. They have grown. They're about 3 to 4 meters high. And these are early colonizing species that were planted intentionally so that they start creating the conditions so that the other seedlings that we're planting will grow and also start bringing the seed dispersers, the critters, the microclimatic conditions that are important for biodiversity connectivity, biodiversity dispersal. And the idea is that while it's a little drop in the bucket, right, in this sea of deforested landscape, that is a pasture-dominant landscape, it's still going to be significant for the critters that are using this small habitats to move and live and persist in these fragmented landscapes. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. It's a very important discussion. It's not just about hectares, but we are really trying to raise the bar in terms of evaluation of the projects and business that we are investing. Now let's move to our panel, and I will hand it over to Eduardo.
Okay, guys, this is a multi-sectoral panel that we want to have a great discussion. We'll be talking about challenges and opportunities and best practices. We really want to focus on the practices, right? And today we have here in person Bruna Mesquita from Michelin. Bruna, I will ask you to become here with us. And online, I want to check with you guys. Victor, are you there?
Hello, Udo. I'm here. Good
Great.
afternoon.
Good afternoon, Victor. Nick, also hearing us?
Yep, I'm
Yep.
here.
Good. Otávio?
Yeah, I'm here as well.
Great. Thank you. So, yeah, I will first start with just just a bio of each of you guys. So, Bruna has a post-graduation in circular economy and sustainable development. She's been working for more than 12 years in French multinationals, especially Michelin, for more than 10 years, right? In different areas, but nowadays she's the regional sustainability manager for South America, right? Victor has a master in ecology for Schumacher College from Schumacher College and Plymouth University. He has worked for more than 10 years in the third section in organizations such as ICLEI South America, World Resources Institute, and also he was leading the Nature-Based Solutions Alliance, Brazilian Alliance. Nowadays, Victor is the bioeconomy coordinator in Arapiaú Institute, contributing to productive change to promote forest conservation in the Atlantic forest and the Amazon. Nick is a co-founder of Impact Earth, dedicated to impact investing, especially the ABF fund that we have already heard, being an investment advisor. Nick has worked with carbon finance, impact investing, and third sector, and also as an entrepreneur. And Otávio, yeah, this one. So Otávio is a forestry engineer and is currently leading the bioeconomy team at WWF Brazil. He has been working to develop new biodiversity ingredients also in the companies, private companies, and strengthening sustainable value chains in Brazil. Also supporting governments, Brazilian government, and the German Agency for International Cooperation. Okay, so I will start with you, Victor. Considering your experience on, especially on Bahia State and the development of cocoa chain, which I know that you are already sending a lot of learnings and trying to implement them in the Amazon as well. Could you tell us some of the gaps that you identify, Victor, to foster investments and innovation that will actually bring more biodiversity conservation in those biomes? And please give us more background, if you want, on the initiatives from Arapiaú in Bahia and also Amazon.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. So first of all, I'm sorry to not be in person today. I'm actually arriving tomorrow in Cali, so it'll be a pleasure to be with all of you and meet in person. Yeah, but immense pleasure to be here today, and thank you very much for our partner organizations for the invitation. So, Arapiaú Institute is a Brazilian philanthropic institution focused on promoting development that focus on natural, social, and economic aspects. And one thing that I like to always say is that we always bring together different stakeholders from civil society, philanthropy, academia, public and private sectors, aiming to create this transformative network and systemic scalable solutions with less impact. So, as Eduardo already said, we focus our work in both Amazon and Atlantic forest biomes, since both are regions with immense biodiversity, and always trying to exchange insights, experience between these two territories, trying to amplify these conservation efforts and bridging this local and global perspective also. So one thing that I think that the experience that I would like to bring also, and then I can say more about the gaps that we faced in this experience, that we work a lot with the cocoa chain. So in Brazil, we have almost 80% of the cocoa productions in agroforest systems, and this is very significant. And both Amazon and the Atlantic forest are the main producers in cocoa in Brazil. Although monoculture has been also expanding and treating this type of system, they are very diverse. So in 2020, we launched the first blended finance instrument for sustainable cocoa, which is a credit solutions with technical assistance for these cocoa farmers, small cocoa farmers that are constantly and frequently marginalized from the traditional finance systems. And we began with 250 producers in Bahia, in the Atlantic forest, covering 1,000 hectares of forest and agroforest systems. And then in 2023, we expanded in the second phase for 1,000 producers across Bahia and the Amazon Pará, impacted more than 7,000 hectares. And now this year, we are scaling this instrument in what we are calling like Sustainable Cocoa Fund, which we aim to reach more than 2,000 producers, small farmers. We are focused on small farmers, rural settlements, and traditional communities, impacting more than 14,000 hectares and mobilizing more than $10 million, both in market credit and concessional capital. And I think that I would say that the main gaps is that we face is how can we encourage these productive models that align biodiversity conservation with generating income for smallholder farmers, right? So we cannot disassociate food systems with the biodiversity also. And how can we create the incentives to encourage the adoption of these systems? So especially these farmers can maintain these traditional systems, the agroforest systems, even on a large scale, right? So we already have conducted these different phases and pilots on these impact investment models that have shown the results. Now we need also to scale. So we need scalable models and finance for these instruments, and also to measure. I think what Andy said is it's very important, and I think that it's one way to close the gaps. How can we measure also and show this biodiversity gain with this system? So we are also committed to understanding this broader environmental impact of our work, partner with public universities so that we can also measure biodiversity indicators such as birds diversity, medium and big mammals, and also soil health, to show that both of impact of this credit align with technical systems, most of them agroecological technical systems in these cocoa agroforest systems. So yeah, I think it's this. Really excited to be part here in the discussion more.
Yeah, I'll go back to you soon. But Nick, I want to use the same question for you, considering your experience with ABF as a mechanism, as an applied successful model for impact investing. So can you bring us some of your concerns and the gaps that you identify to foster those initiatives that do actually the biodiversity conservation in the Amazon?
Sure. Hi, Edu. Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I'm dialing in from London. I'm sorry I can't be there in Cali with you all. So when it comes to challenges or concerns, the biggest challenge that we face with a model like ABF is the time it takes to execute an investment. So we always say that and it's true, you know, we don't have a challenge when it comes to pipeline. There's an awful lot of very interesting, high impact, high potential investment opportunities in the Amazon region. The biggest challenge for us and other investors is the time it takes to bring those to a stage of investment readiness. Where I guess we're a little bit different to other investors is that we were willing to spend a lot more time working with high impact or high potential investees to bring them to a point where they are investable by EBF and other investors. But you know, to give you an example, some of our investments, many of our investments actually take longer than a year to move from an idea to investment ready. If you consider the cycle of a impact investment fund, typically is, you know, a 3 to 5 year investment window. If all of your investments and your deals are taking more than a year to bring to execution, it means you're not going to be able to implement many deals unless you take a slightly different approach, have more time, have more resources. So I'd say that's the biggest challenge for us is time.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, we keep been hearing about the Amazon timing. So it's very important I think it's very important for us to really understand how this really becomes an obstacle when we are talking about investments. Okay, so I will go back to you soon as well, Nick. But now I wanna talk with Bruna here, and then Otávio. Bruna, we have seen about the initiative, the rubber revitalization in the Amazon, and we know that you've been working with innovative approaches for sustainable sourcing. I want to hear from you why this initiative could be considered a good practice, an example for the private sector engagement towards biodiversity conservation.
Super, Edu, super. I will stand up because after the lunch, we start to me. Thank you for your question. I think it's important first to give the context. Yeah, the Michelin is an industrial company, French one. We have not only tires, we go beyond tires, and we have our all sustainable strategy. But I and our team as Sustainable Manager for Sustainability at South America, we need to tropicalize this strategy. Yeah? And when you think Brazil is the most biodiverse country in the world, we have 20% of the flora and fauna of the roads in Brazil. So we have a huge responsibility there. Yeah? We work very close with rubber. I don't know if you know, but the industrial rubber is the main consumer of rubber. Yeah, we have an industry in Manaus, so we just realized how important it was to really connect with this initiative. So what is about? We are revitalize, revitalize the native natural rubber from Amazon. Do you know the Hevea brasilienne? The native rubber is from Amazon, so it's not planted, okay? It's not cultivated. You're talking about to go there, rescues with the families, let's go back for this activity. But we are not alone. We are with the WWF, Memorial Chico Mendes, CNS, Imaflora, PPA, USAID, Connexus. For me, this is the first good point to be shared. It's a really multi-stakeholder approach should be really robustness. We not go alone. Anybody here, we go to save Amazon alone. Forget about this idea. I think the good robustness you have is to be a multi-sector approach together, looking for that, and focus on the base communities, okay? We have all this very clear goal to put the native rubber chain, again, in sustainable way. We need to focus our energy, our efforts on the communities, to prepare, to be strong, yeah, to give all support on that. So for me, this is the good practice. And of course, have some practice things I can share with you from the private sector perspective. For example, we have a long-term contract. So we can give okay, guys, you can beg for that. We will be here. You have the purchase guarantee just now, from now for the next 3 years, don't matter how you want. You are paying the fair price. Of course, you are paying the fair price because I like the idea to imagine it with me, because I have this visit in my Manicoré in these years, yeah? Mark and Eduardo, we visit the Manicoré. So you have Manuel, that's a guy from the Manicoré. The guy wake up at 3 a.m., they take the tapper, the light, and go around to tapper the rubber tree. When they are doing that, they are the guardian of the forest. They are stopping deforestation and some other activity. So we need to recognize all the knowledge of these communities, all the services they are providing to keep the forest up. So as you know, the rubber is a commodity, but of course we are paying additional the ecosystem services for these communities and also for the association who give it all the support for them. So I will not stand to have many questions, but to summarize, I think that's a good point.
Thank you, Bruna. Yeah, we had a great experience there.
I don't know if you...
Yeah, well, we were discussing in a very special public space before I got a bit a disease, a virus, that finally I couldn't go to the local community, but I heard some great examples.
Just to have a moment here, Eduardo organized everything, every detail of the trip, and the day of the trip, he just got sick, very sick.
Very sick. But I heard that it was...
Thank you for that.
No. Otávio, yeah, I want to see if you have compliments for what Bruna have said, considering WWF strategies on partnerships for scaling up biodiversity conservation through bioeconomy and impact investments. What could you say about this initiative for the rubber revitalization in the Amazon?
Yeah, first of all, hi Edu, hi everybody, and thank you all for the invitation. Yeah, I'll try to add on what Bruna just brought. As a context as well, for many years in Brazil, the government tried to revitalize or bring it up again the rubber value chain, which almost vanished because of a competition with monoculture, and despite all the efforts, all the results, all the initiatives or the attempts failed because there was no companies committed or willing to buy this rubber. And that's why I truly believe that the private sector play an important role in this case, in this kind of initiative, because it is game changing having a committed off-taker willing, guaranteeing the purchases, as Bruna said, with long-term contracts, and also paying a price that covers not only for the product but also pay for the environmental services that it comes with this product. So yeah, that's why we are partnering with Michelin Foundation, Michelin, and also Connexus, that Edu mentioned before, which is also a partner of PPA. So yeah, I see that promoting this direct and ethical relationship between producers and companies that are committed to recognize the added value to this products. It's really one of the best ways to promote conservation or in socio-economic development. And I'm going to add another thing regarding Conexus, which is an organization, an NGO that works with blended finance, which is also part of this this initiative. For many years, that the government tried to bring this to bring back the rubber value chain. One of the programs that Brazilian government has is PRONAF, which is a credit program that offers working capital to producers with a really low interest rate. But despite it is low, it is not really adequate or really made tailor-made, let's say, to Amazon. More than 80% of the money that comes from this program is accessed by producers in the south of Brazil. So it is a low-cost money, but it costs a lot to make it reach them with funds, with grants, and we use the third sector use grants. We use other resources to help and reach this public program. That's why we also brought Conexus to work with us. They have this blended finance mechanism, which still couldn't reach all the associations, which is one of the challenges as well, because it takes time to prepare. I think Nick also brought it up. It takes time to prepare a small organization to manage to know how to manage this kind of money resource and be able to pay it back in the end. So this is another thing that we also brought to this initiative, which is also helping a lot in making it feasible. So it's a private money. So it's the private sector buying the rubber and also providing working capital to the value chain.
Thanks, Otávio. Yeah, definitely this is a big arrangement between different types of institutions, very specialized, as Conexus is, and I know you are also checking on traceability, right?
With Imaflora.
With Imaflora. So, yeah, this is bringing up a very consistent initiative that we can use as an example, and maybe, yep.
Just to add, Edu, I think it's important also to add, we have some access of subvention municipality, so also we have the government on that, yeah, make some contribution to foment this chain again. So more another actor to get involved in.
Yeah, I totally remember how we were talking about the public actors in Manicoré, and they were pretty concentrated on the discussions and how we can dialogue with the local actors, right? Great. So Otávio talked about also about the opportunities and the point of view of timing and what Nick has said before. So Nick, I'll go back to you now, and I wanna hear you about the role of strengthening the ecosystem, the impact ecosystem. Which are the opportunities that you identify during this experience of running the ABF fund?
I think the biggest opportunities are for us. We look at it from an impact and additionality point of view. So often the biggest opportunities are the ones where you can have most impact and have most additionality. With a fund like ABF, you can really afford to take the time and dedicate resources to working with some of these counterparties that would not otherwise be able to access funding, and maybe leave, you know, some of the more mature investments to some of the bigger investors and developers that are out there at the moment. So for us, you know, the big opportunities are really on projects and businesses and cooperatives that are working with smallholders or underserved communities. We've done, we've started doing projects with indigenous communities. Very early days for us, but we've started doing that recently. For the past couple of years, we've been doing investments that are linked with smallholders, either kind of distributed groups of them or settlements, asentamientos, the types of underserved communities in the Amazon. And that's where I think, you know, we've got a big opportunity for impact, and there's very little impact funding available for these communities today. ABF often enters as the only investor, sometimes as a co-investor, but often very early. Co-investors often come in later, but you know, we still see quite a big funding gap there, and that's where I think there's also a big opportunity for other people to come in and crowd in a bit more money.
Nick, could you maybe share with us one of the examples that you worked with in the Amazon?
Sure. An example project might be it's called Amazonia Agroforestal. It's a spin-off of IDASAM, which is a Brazilian NGO. They incubated a pilot project called Café Apuí, started over 10 years ago in the municipality of Apuí in southern Amazonas state. And that project basically involves working with a couple of hundred smallholder producers, so really smallholders, and they tend to be already coffee producers, but they're producing coffee that's very, very low quality, low productivity. And Amazon Agroforestal project works with them by providing them with the support, the training, the inputs, the technical assistance they need to implement a more productive coffee system and implement it in a more in a way that promotes biodiversity, soil health. So they use an agroforestry system using native species to the area. And what's quite innovative about this approach is that it's also linked to what's called a grouped RED Plus project, which is basically a conservation carbon project. So the project works with the farmers to say, we will implement this coffee agroforestry on your land, we'll improve the biodiversity, soil health, we'll also buy some of that coffee, we'll certify most of it, we'll buy say 50% of it, we'll pay you this price above market rate, we'll certify it organic. Free to do what you like with the rest. If you want to sell it to us, you can. In addition, we expect you to conserve all of your remaining forest. And that conservation bit is the bit that falls under what's called the Red Plus or the carbon project. And then in exchange, they receive carbon-based payments. So they receive a share in the carbon finance that is managed by the company. And what will be a little bit innovative about this, or our approach, is we're going to be very transparent. We haven't had any results yet, so we can't share the information, but all of the lion's share of benefits will stay with communities and local stakeholders, and will, in our impact reports at the fund level, we'll start to publish that so that the wider market can see, and we can promote these more equitable approaches to implementing carbon conservation programs.
Okay. Yeah, great example in a very strategic area in the Amazon, the south of the Amazonas states. Thank you, Nick. Victor, I will also ask you about your views on the opportunities, considering, well, Nick said about the example on the coffee value chain. What about on the cocoa value chain? Could you add some thoughts?
Yes, sure. I think, in my view, a key opportunity when we are talking on cocoa chain, especially on cocoa agroforest systems in Amazon and in the Atlantic rainforest, is the link between biodiversity conservation and income generation. So one data that is also quite impressive is that we have almost 50% of the cocoa productions in Brazil living on below a living wage. So in Instituto Arapiaú, we are almost trying to work a lot between the link in these two agendas and demonstrating that they are not mutually exclusive, but hardly complementary. So Brazil has a unique potential to lead also food production combined with biodiversity conservation, especially in the social biodiversity value chains. And another example that we have is that in this blended finance instrument for the cocoa that we have already implemented, I said before, we have achieved in just 1 year an increase of income of almost 40% in the small producers, which also demonstrates this economic viability of this practice that maintain and enhance the biodiversity. And we are also now trying to close this circle, like with a new instrument, also like a environmental payment for environmental service, looking with focus also on biodiversity to generate more income for these productions. And also would like to already make an invitation that in these next few days we are going to launch a publication that's a very massive publication with data showing how these cocoa agroforest systems are like quite important for ecosystem service and the biodiversity. And so one example of this information is that one study that we found identified that 300 species of native Atlantic forest trees in the agroforest systems compared to 180 in native forest, right? The fauna in these systems are even more impressive. We can say that they are sometimes comparable with native forest, and we know that they are not substitute. Native forests cannot be substituted by other land uses, even when we are talking about cacao agroforest systems. But these data show how they are complementary, and we need to have especially when we are thinking about land uses, planning, how they are complementary and how can they not represent an obstacle to this production of food. But they must have been seen also as a valuable of cultural, environmental, and social assets also. So yeah, I think that a big opportunity in Brazil also is to link food production for traditional community, smallholder farmers, rural agrarian settlements with biodiversity conservation. We have a lot of studies and data that show that they are both viable.
Thanks, Victor. Yeah, and thanks for the invitation. We'll definitely check that on PPA side as well. So I'll get back now to Bruna and Otávio. Bruna, we talked before. Victor and Nick talked about gaps, and from your perspective and your role on the private sector as a business, do you identify any main challenge or gap that you have to consider to foster this or to plan other initiatives, or maybe to be together with other enterprises that also want to do an initiative like you did?
Main gaps. We have more gaps than yeah, and we like to talk about these gaps to make it vulnerable, because I think you have other companies can be watching, can be inspiring, and they cannot be afraid how we can just move on around this gap. I will share with you the first gap when we start this initiative, and can you imagine it? We go to the financial team and say, guys, I know usually we pay with 30, 6 days, 90 days, but now we need to pay anticipated. They say, wow, wait, we didn't pay anticipated. No, now we need. You have no risk to be covered here, because as Otávio shared with us, in this kind of initiative, you don't have work capital available. They are not able to access work capital available. So without that, it's not make possible to have a deal here. So, okay, let's do that. So the first learnings was about to implement an internal social bioeconomy policy. As we are a multinational company with standardized process, we need to create a space internal. Guys, this rubber is completely different of the rubber we are buying in São Paulo, in Asia, etc. So internal process to be adapt a big company to make a deal with the small families. So that was the first learning. Okay, we can move on that. Of course, we have many challenges when talking about logistics. Amazon is really complex, it's really expensive. Now we have a very complicated DAF now. DAF, yeah, a seca. Yep. So, okay, but we can move on that. Okay, we can invite other partners, work together, and move on that. But that's a gap. But for me, we have a lack of public policies as well. Today, the social bioeconomy doesn't have the same level of public policy accessible as we have in other case of business. That's why Michelin and other players, we are in Brasilia in advocacy for new public policies on social bioeconomy. We have a gap of understandable, we have a gap of the marketing, demand this kind of products. Many people don't know what is social bioeconomy, what is it talking about, so we have a gap on that. But for me, the main gap we have today is about willingness to pay. As you know, this rubber is really expensive, and should be, because we are paying the fair price. But today we have a challenge, how we can capture the value at the product and capture the willingness to pay from the customer to close the case. Who here know about Veja, the tennis? Yeah. For me, it's a very good case. I'm completely passionate about that. It's a very benchmark. They have all the fair price, all the production well done, and at the end, I am the consumer. It's very expensive, but I paid. They closed the case. We are still in work on that. We have some difficulty on that, so there's a gap. but we believe in together with these teams. And also, our last gap, not the last, but for me is really important, we have a gap of information as well. When you go to Amazon on these robot chains, you know about science. When you ask me, Bruna, what's the scale opportunity you have today in Amazon? I don't know. I don't know how many we can purchase of wide hubber from Amazon. We don't have this information. That's a gap as well. But we are there. We are step by step and really incentivating other companies who would like to join on this kind of initiative to really look for Amazon social products and how you can insert it in your own operation. That's really valuable, and we are here to talk if anyone would like to.
Thank you, Bruna. Guys, we have 5 more minutes.
Ooh.
So as Bruna said many gaps, Otávio, I will check here with the audience if anyone has a question that we perhaps can send it to the panelists, but not only, also Mark is connected. He could also answer some questions. So let's see if someone...
I have a girl here.
Nope.
Ooh, thanks so much, everyone who's in here in person and online. I'm Catherine Whalen. I'm from USAID Washington in our Biodiversity Division. And I really appreciated what you said about MRV for the biodiversity space. I think it's really true. It's not as well developed. And in some of the areas and countries where we work, we get a lot of questions about how to do it. And so I was wondering if, thinking back, you could share some advice for what you would recommend people know if they're just starting out in that space. Because I think, as you said, like measuring not just within a company, but across a whole portfolio is really important. So I didn't know if you had any additional advice. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for the question. Certainly, we went through a whole couple of years of learning experiences. We had a pilot, and it really depends on what your aims are, because for our situation, we needed something practical, something that we wanted to engage the private sector so that costs would also be reduced. They're already in the field, so that you don't have to spend long seasons collecting data and stuff like that. This is a very practical approach. It engages them. They're part of the process, and so they are also part of the understanding of what the impacts that their business have. Some of the projects, they want the results so that they also market their business model to clients and stuff. So that's really nice, you know. So the whole aspect of the CALPSI program in terms of private sector engagement, the engagement has to be key from the beginning. In terms of the monitoring approaches for biodiversity, there's many types, right? There's camera traps, there's acoustics, now bioacoustics. So it really depends on what you're aiming. For us, we had to adapt environmental DNA for agricultural type of settings, which it had not necessarily been done that much. So in the approach that we have, we're also focusing on insects because they're abundant, because they have short life cycles, because they also are environmental indicators. So there's loads of lessons in the process, but it has to be, MRB has to be customized for your own case. And I think a very important point about biodiversity monitoring is that it's a local type of approach that we want to try to push at the global scale. So applications need to be specific to the different business models, projects, situations, initiatives, and the information has to be local, but the understanding of having to do this has to be agreed globally, which is what we're doing here, right? Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation. Really, really insightful. I have 2 questions, if I may. One is for you, Wendy. I love the approach for MRV for biodiversity. I think it's extremely tough. So the approach that you have, satellite imagery, as well as pretty much soil samples, bioacoustics, and so on, I think is interesting. I know you already just touched on it and went a little bit deeper. Would you be able to go even a little bit deeper on how you use those soil samples to create any sort of insights into species intactness? Are you primarily focusing on insects to then extrapolate what you think like other animals that are around there? Like, I'd love to go a little bit deeper there if we have the time. And the second question would be for you, Bruna, for Michelin. Can you share, I don't know if that's proprietary information, what percentage of rubber that Michelin is using overall in Brazil is actually coming from those Amazon projects out of the overall rubber intake that you have?
Thank you. I'll be very quickly, and maybe we can talk afterwards as well. But something that was key is that we're looking at comparing the interventions, the results from the intervention site, with a natural habitat. So that way, we don't necessarily need to have an understanding of all the species that are there, but it's more of a community ecology approach. So it's our reference area for us to be able to say, give us a gradient, right? So is it a community of species that it's more similar to a counterfactual situation, a pasture basically? Or is it a community of species that it's looking more like the forest area? So it ends up being, the presentation that was here before, they were talking about the use of qualitative type of indicators as well, being key and under look. So while we do have quantitative data and the results, it's also a bit of a temperature in terms of how these interventions are starting to provide the conditions to resemble a forest type of habitat, which is never going to happen because they're productive systems. But at the same time, we want to try to increase the amount of habitat that resemble forest type conditions.
Super quickly, today is really, really small volume. Just to be shared with you, we started its initiative the first harvest was 2021. We bought 7 tons. Then we increased for 6 tons. Last year we have 130 tons. It's really, really small. We are there. We have step by step. We would like to buy more and more, but today the capacity to engage, to buy is really, really small. So we not open the percentage because it is relative and how much we buy is complex, but we have 6 factories in Brazil. We can buy even more. Just prepare the families to go on their time. Yeah.
Oh, can I quickly add on that?
Very quickly, yeah.
Oh, very quickly. No, it's a very good question, and but I used to say that the most important number of this project is not the volume, it's not tons, but the number of associations. We are talking about 11 associations in almost 10 different municipalities in Amazonas state, and we are talking about almost 500 families involved in the project. Because as the rubber tree is scattered around the forest, it happens. It is one tree or 1.5 tree per hectare. So it's not. We are not talking about volume. We are talking about people and hectares conservated, or with improved conservation. Let's say.
Okay, thank you, Otávio. I ask if our colleagues online wants to bring something, to add something before we end. Mark, if you want to bring final thoughts.
No, thanks. No, I mean, nothing in particular. I think it was a very interesting conversation. I think you're seeing real life case studies here that are critical to doing this, and thanks to the colleagues who I both got to travel with and then see the great work up close. I mean, I guess my takeaway would be, hopefully in time it doesn't have to be this hard. I know how hard these people work to make these things happen, and certainly it's easy to say something like, let's have a business case. But, Bruno going back to Michelin and selling it to the accountants and the leadership and making sure that they get a product that allows them to make their business model work is critical, right? So, we talk about even new programs we're designing here where we don't want anybody to not define themselves the way they want to define themselves in their own communities. However, we want everyone to be able to think of themselves as an economic actor and understand what it takes to succeed in an economic system. And I think that's critical going forward. We all need to help people think that way. We all need to think that way ourselves. while we continue to be and honor the fact that there's a lot of different ways to go about living and being in this world. A lot of those that we see in the Amazon, that are different ways of going about it. But at the end of the day, we have to find these private sector solutions. We got to get the capital in there, because the capital rules the day on some level, and that's just the reality, whether we like it or not. We got to make sure that innovation, which can figure out ways to, smell sneakers to kids on street corners, can also figure out ways to source rubber for tires in Michelin motorcycles, right? Or in cosmetics. So it's just critical. I find it very uplifting. I thank all of you for being here and listening, and for being at the COP, taking this stuff very seriously, and doing the hard work to innovate. Take the chance, right? ABF is taking a chance. They have to return to investors. They have to be good at what they do. They have to pick the right risks. They have to know how to price those risks out, and we have to be there to support these innovative attempts, whether it's the right kind of capital, the right kind of KPI, the right kind of investment program. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Guys, we run out of time, so I would like to thank you, our invitees, and also the people who were with us during the session. And please feel free to reach us out. We are going to be around, so if you want to discuss something, we will be available. So thank you very much. And Edu?
Yeah, just wanna thank you, thanks the guys that connected online, Victor, Nick, Otavio, Mark. Yeah, it was a pleasure having this hybrid event. I think we heard great practices, great examples, and yeah, thanks so much for CGIAR Pavilion that opened this space for us.
Thanks, everyone. Ciao.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Ciao.
everyone. Good night.
Ciao.
Thank you. Great job, all.
It was great. Thank you all for staying.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Great
Boa
to
noite.
hear you all from the Zoom. Thanks a lot. See you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Bye.